Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's professional development session on using new quizzes in Canvas. I'm Dave Giberson. I'm an old instructional design coordinator from Online Learning Pathways, and doing a little consulting here to do these professional development sessions and stay in touch with you all and see old friends and make new ones. So, what are new quizzes? What? Well, we've been using quizzes in Canvas forever. Sure, we have. It is a new testing system in Canvas that will eventually replace classic quizzes, the quizzing engine that we're using now to make quizzes. Quiz, of course, in Canvas being anything from a 2-question pop quiz to a 100-question final exam. All tests in Canvas are referred to as quizzes. So the engine that allows us to create and administer these quizzes right now is called classic quizzes in Canvas. And new quizzes will eventually replace that. They're going to turn off classic quizzes in the summer of 2024. So we can use classic quizzes until then. Indeed, you can use both classic quizzes and new quizzes in your courses at the same time. They don't look that different to students, so the student will never know probably whether you created a quiz in the classic quizzing engine or the new quizzing engine. Or if they do, the difference is not going to be enough to confuse them. So there are a lot of people using new quizzes in Canvas right now. Along with classic quizzes, or even exclusively in their course, exclusively using new quizzes in their courses, because they do offer significant improvements over classic quizzes. But they're not quite at feature parity with classic quizzes. That is, they're not quite ready to be the only quizzing engine in Canvas, because there are some features that we have in classic quizzes that we still don't have in new quizzes that haven't been implemented yet. And they're going to implement most of those in new quizzes, and they just haven't gotten that done yet. This has been a multi-year project for Instructure, and it's taken them longer than they expected to finalize new quizzes. So that's why they're giving us the extra time with classic quizzes. But new quizzes are absolutely functional, they're reliable, and they offer some significant advantages. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's now take a look and see what some of the differences are, so you can get a feeling for whether new quizzes will do what you need them to do. Let's see. Okay, this is a feature comparison chart that Canvas or the Instructure keeps updated. And I just pulled this one out this morning. So this is the current state of new quizzes. And I've highlighted some things. I'm not going to go through this line by line. I will give you this link. As a matter of fact, I should do that right now. So if you want to go through this in more detail yourself, I had that here a moment ago. Just a second. I want to give you the one from Instructure. There we go. Finally got it. I'll put that in the chat tool. There's the link to this document. Okay. There's good news and bad news in this, as you might expect. By and large, new quizzes are pretty full-featured right now, but there are some things that they do that classic quizzes won't, and vice versa still. Like exporting quizzes as a QTI file so you can share them with somebody on another system. That's not supported in new quizzes yet. You can do it with classic quizzes. So you can't export a quiz from Canvas, a new quiz from Canvas as a zip file. We don't use proctoring, live proctoring systems much here at the district. There's been a general disinclination among our faculty to affect students' privacy in that way. But that is one, if you do happen to be in a sub-organization at the district that is using something like Proctorio for live online proctoring, new quizzes don't yet work with that in Canvas, while classic quizzes do, obviously. The question banks in classic quizzes have an equivalent in new quizzes called item banks. They're the same thing. It's just a test bank that from which you can pull questions when you're creating a test. And I'll show you how that works in new quizzes here in a few minutes. But the item banks have a different format. And one of the things we'll talk about today is how you can take your question banks, classic question banks that you already have, and convert them into item banks that you can use in new quizzes. The process is not as automatic as it should be. And that's one of the reasons that new quizzes are not yet ready to be the only quizzing engine you have. But they do offer item banks offer some advantages. Notably, you can share them with colleagues or with the entire institution. If you get a good question bank that you're willing to share, you can share them with other courses of your own, with multiple courses, with the entire account, or with specific users. So that's an advantage to item banks over question banks. Again, item banks is what we call the test bank in new quizzes. Question banks is what they're called in classic quizzes, just so we know what we're talking about, the jargon. Occasionally, I've had people ask, oh, I really need to print a quiz out of Canvas so I can give it to somebody who's going to come in and take it on paper. And it's possible to do that, but it requires some workarounds to make it work. And you can just print the quiz pretty much, or an answer key. But again, with classic quizzes, it takes some fiddling. New quizzes support that natively. You can print a quiz for a student to take in person. You can print a student's quiz with the answers if you want to sit down and go over the test with them, or you can print an answer key for yourself. And those are features that are organic to new quizzes. It's a lot easier to do that in new quizzes than it is in classic quizzes, and quicker. You can create practice quizzes and ungraded quizzes in both classic and new quizzes, but there's a bit of a workaround to do it in new quizzes at this point in time. You just assign 0 points to the quiz. You can do that in new quizzes where you couldn't in classic quizzes. Indeed, one of the nicest things about new quizzes is the way it handles possible points on the quiz. It makes it a lot easier to set up your grading scheme with new quizzes, and I'll go over that. The one big red mark right now that doesn't look like it's going to be alleviated when we go to new quizzes is that, of course, in classic quizzes, we can also create surveys that look a lot like quizzes, but that aren't graded, that are just serve to collect information and opinions from our students. New quizzes has no survey engine in it. We can't create course surveys in new quizzes. So we'll have to use, and Instructure, as far as we know, is not intending to provide that functionality at all when they sunset classic quizzes. So we'll have to use some third-party tool that's not part of Canvas if we want to do our own surveys within a Canvas course. That's by no means impossible, and there are lots of free ways to do that, and some things you can pay for if they're more convenient, but it was nice to have the option, have the organic option built into Canvas. That's one thing we're not as happy with as we might be with Instructure. They've heard that from a lot of people. We'll see if they change their minds by 2024. No telling. So as you can see, largely there's a lot of equivalence between the two. One still aggravating feature that situation that I'll illustrate as we go through creating a new quiz here in a minute is that when you create quiz questions in the and do other and indeed when you create quiz questions in new quizzes, you're not using the new rich content editor that we've been using for about the last almost 2 years now. When you're editing a quiz question and doing some more sophisticated things like adding video or audio files or inserting content, fairly esoteric things would trigger this difference. But it uses the old rich content editor interface, which most of us have sort of forgotten by now, which is a little aggravating. Another big reason, that's why it's in red here, another big reason why these new quizzes are not ready to be our only quizzing engine. If you're creating certain types of more sophisticated test questions, you may you have to go back and how did I do that in the old rich content editor? That we don't know exactly when they're working on remedying that right now, but we don't really know when that might happen. Okay. One of the nicest things about new quizzes is that they have pretty much all of the question types that you're used to using in classic quizzes. There are some workarounds like fill in multiple blanks and multiple drop-down questions in classic quizzes have to be kind of, you have to use the fill in the blank question in new quizzes, which is a bit more sophisticated than the one in classic quizzes, and it will give you some of this functionality. But if you use a lot of fill in multiple blank questions or multiple drop-down questions, you may not want to use new quizzes yet for that particular functionality. But the nicest thing there are some really cool new question types in new quizzes that we'll take a brief look at today. Categorization questions, stimulus questions, ordering questions, and hotspot questions. The hotspot questions are especially fun and really good for testing visual identification of people, of things, of images, and so on. So it's that's one of the best things about new quizzes. There are some settings changes, things that you can do, and you can control the behavior of the quizzes in new quizzes, and pretty much the same way you do in classic quizzes, but there are some new options that are nice. You can, if you give multiple attempts on the test, you can force the students to wait an amount of time you choose between the two, taking the two attempts. So you force them to go back and study a little bit and so on. They can't just say, I want to get this over with, and go right into the new attempt. That's optional. It doesn't do that automatically. But you can set it so that students can't take the second or third or whatever test attempt right away. They have to have a cooling off period. One of the best things about new quizzes, again, is its ability to shuffle questions globally. What that means is that when you make a new quiz with a bunch of questions, there's a single checkbox you can check that will ensure that every student gets those questions in a different order to increase test security. That was one of the one of the better ways to increase test security online. A student can't call up and say, what's the answer to number 3? If they do, they're going to get a bad answer probably, or a bad steer. So the new quizzes includes that option, where classic quizzes did not. There was a way to do that with classic quizzes, but it was a kludge. It's a several step process that was kind of counterintuitive and was a bit of a pain to do every time you created a quiz. And whereas in classic quizzes, you can randomize the order of the answers in multiple choice and multiple answer and matching questions when they're displayed to students. So no two students see the answers in the same order, so they can't ask one another, well, is A, what's the answer to question 3? Oh, it's A, the first answer. Well, it may not be for the next student. You can do that in both classic and new quizzes, but that's not always appropriate. And if you forget that you've got a question in your quiz somewhere that, where the fourth multiple choice answer is all of the above, and that comes first accidentally comes first in the answer list, the students are going to be confused. So you have to be sure that you don't include questions like that in your test. But if you're fond of those, as I am, new quizzes will allow you to choose which questions to shuffle the answers on. So you can say, don't shuffle the answers on this question, and still use that question with multiple choice question with the fourth answer being all of the above. As far as grading goes, in both new quizzes and classic quizzes, of course, we can give individual students or groups of students extra time. The classic reason being a DSPS student who gets 1.5 or 2 times the amount of time to take the test that you would normally limit students to. In classic quizzes, we have a way to do that without having to make 2 quizzes and assign them to different groups of students. And that's true in new quizzes as well. But with with classic quizzes, you have to remember to do that for every quiz, each quiz in the course. You have to do it. You have to touch each quiz in order to make sure that the DSPS student gets extra time. In new quizzes, you can do that for the entire course at one time. You can tell Canvas to give, or the new quizzing engine to give a particular student 1.5 or 2 times the amount of time that other students get on all quizzes with one operation on your part. So you can't forget to do that later, and you don't have to spend the time to moderate each and every quiz. The speed grader and all that is still the same. And that's pretty much those are the things I wanted to highlight for you, but you have the complete feature comparison chart if you want it in the chat tool. A link to it, and it is dynamic. They keep it updated, so as they fix something or add something, they update that chart. Any questions about any of those?
No, but I do have a comment, Dave, if I could share one.
Please.
Hi, this is Takima. You mentioned about the shuffling of answers.
Yes.
So what I've done, what I figured out that kind of works is, and I put it in the chat, I'll either put none of the answers or all of the answers. Right. So then it wouldn't matter what order, and then you could still use that if it's appropriate.
That's a good idea. That saves that. Mm-hmm. And you also, but occasionally if you get really fancy with a multiple choice question, you say, and you have an answer that says B and C, but not, only B and C are correct or something like that, then you have that same issue. But yeah, it's easy enough to avoid that problem, but it's so much easier to avoid it in new quizzes than it is in classic quizzes.
Dave?
Yes.
Dave, I have a question. So right now, when I create a quiz, let's say at Mesa College, and I need to use it at Southwestern, I share it in Commons and I get it out of there. Will it still be possible in the new quizzes?
It will be, but it is not yet possible to do that. So you'd have to share it in a different way. You'd have to export and you can't export a new quiz from a course either. So that makes it a good deal more difficult to share quiz.
So I cannot export the cartridge, download on my computer, then put it in another college.
Well, unfortunately, you can't export a new quiz.
Yeah.
Either. So they know that's a problem and they are fixing it, but that's just a functionality they have not implemented yet.
Okay, but that is
probably what you would have to do in that case is export the entire course into a Canvas export, and then send that file as an attachment, email attachment or some other way to your colleague. They would have to import that into a Canvas shell and then just take the quiz they want from there.
But it's not going to affect transferring between containers within the same college, right?
It will. They will copy, yes, from containers within the same college.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Okay.
I have a question. It may be a little off, not exactly related.
I'm going to cover, I'll let you know. Go right ahead.
I'm sorry?
I say if it's something I'm about to cover, I will let you know.
Okay.
So
no,
right
I
ahead.
wanted to, it's a question. Basically, I haven't seen the shells in Canvas for the courses I will be teaching this semester. So
July 19th. They will.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
You bet. That was an easy and quick one. Okay, so now let's talk about creating new quizzes. It is a little bit of a different process from creating classic quizzes. So we're going to run through that. We're going to create a new quiz. But before we can do that, we have to enable new quizzes in our Canvas course. You can do this. You have to do this course by course right now. The new quizzes tool is available, but it's not active in your course by default. So you have to turn it on. To do that, we'll just pull up a Canvas course here. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I'm just checking the quality of the share here on my laptop next to me. It's better. I just got an internet and home network upgrade. That's helping with that. Okay, then just an aside there. To enable new quizzes in your Canvas course, you'll go to Settings. The Settings link in your course menu at the bottom, usually. And oops, there's my doorbell, and I can't answer that. Sorry, I'm the only one here. All right, and go to across the top here. You have tabs, and there are feature options. If you click that tab and scroll down, you'll find the new quizzes near the bottom of that list. To enable it, you just click this button here, which will be a red X for starters. And just click the red X and tell it you want to enable new quizzes. And there you are. And that takes effect instantly. So how do we create new quizzes? Well, we can go to the quizzes tool in the course menu, is the easiest way to do it. And go and use the add quiz button up here in the upper right. Just click on that. And once you enable new quizzes, Canvas asks you, do you want a classic quiz or a new quiz? And you just pick the one you want. In this case, we'll pick a new quiz. If you were intending to use nothing but new quizzes from now on, you could check this box here that says, remember my choice for this course. I don't really recommend that at this point. There is a way to reverse that if you do that by mistake, but I would recommend still leaving yourself the option to create new quizzes. It's not that big a deal to have to go through this screen in order to create a quiz. So just select new quizzes and click submit.
Dave, before you move on, can I ask you a quick question? Will Classic be available for the duration, or is this going to be just a limited amount of time that the two are going to be available together?
Classic quizzes will be available through the spring of 2024.
Okay, so it's going to be sunsetted then.
It's going to be sunsetted then. So starting summer of 2024, we'll be on new quizzes exclusively. And we're promised by that time that almost all of those features that were lacking in new quizzes that we have in classic quizzes will be available, or something equivalent will be available by that time.
Okay, that's good. That was my next question. So those recordings and all those other things you mentioned,
right,
they're planning on putting them in, right?
Right, they are planning on fixing that, and they're in the process of doing so. This whole process just took a lot longer to create than they thought it would. And it's been a major part of Instructure's development efforts for 3 or 4 years now, at least. And they expected to have this ready to go, ready for prime time a long time before this. So, but they are, to their credit, they're being careful. They're making sure that it works reliably before they turn anything loose and so on. So you're not really significantly more likely to have some kind of glitchy problem with a new quiz than you are with a classic quiz at this point in time. At least that's been our experience so far.
Yeah, and when you're finished, I can share my experience, because it took me like 2 days to transfer some stuff over. So it's long.
We're talking about that transfer process. Some things are simpler than others, as you found. Okay, when we create a new quiz, the first thing we're going to do is have to give it a name. That's not unusual. We'll call this new quiz for seminar 7/12/2022. So I remember what it is in this course. And right away, you start hitting some of the differences between new quizzes and classic quizzes, and some of the better differences. Notice it doesn't say quiz name here, it says assignment name. And indeed, new quizzes share some characteristics with assignments in Canvas that classic quizzes did not. And the biggest one is the ability to set a point value for the quiz. When you create a classic quiz, it doesn't ask you that. The possible points the possible point value for a classic quiz is just the sum of the point values of the questions as you create them in the quiz. And when you finish creating the quiz and save it, Canvas just adds up the point totals for each question and creates the possible points of that quiz in that way. That makes creating a quiz with a set number of possible points more challenging. You either have to be very careful, you have to be very careful in the number of questions you create, what the individual point values are, so that they add up to the number that's in your mind, so that the quiz fits into your grading, your weighting scheme in your grade computation in the Canvas grade book. So that makes creating quizzes, classic quizzes, and making them congruent with your grading scheme a little bit of a challenge if you're using classic quizzes. They fixed that problem. They've heard a lot of people complain about that over the years. They fixed that problem in new quizzes to where you can select a possible, the number of possible points that will be used in grade computations in the Canvas gradebook overtly or manually. I can say, I want this quiz to be worth 20 points in my grading scheme. Does that mean we have to choose possible points for our questions? Because we're going to want to weight our individual questions within the test so that, like an essay question is going to cost, or is going to account for maybe 2 to 5 times the impact on the grade for the quiz than a multiple choice question or something like that. The essay questions be worth more. Do we have to worry about this number here when we're creating, assigning point values to our questions within the quiz? And the answer is no, you don't have to worry about it. Canvas does some arithmetic for you to make this work. I'm going to go through this, okay? The takeaway is just don't worry about it. But what Canvas does, to reassure you, what Canvas does is, let's say this, if you add up the points in the quiz, the quiz is worth, say, 40 points. But you want it to, the possible points used in the grading scheme to be 20 points. How does that work? Well, Canvas, of course, grades the quiz. Those parts of it can. If you use essay questions, you'll have to go into SpeedGrader, as you do now, and grade the essay questions. And then Canvas will have a complete or a final grade for that quiz. Canvas then takes computes a percentage grade for the quiz, divides the possible points into the points the students earned and multiplied by 100. And then it goes and it takes that same percentage of this number right here that you have specified, so that the student will be awarded an appropriate percentage of these 20 points. That way you don't ever have to worry about doing things like setting fractional point values on questions to make the possible points in the quiz come out right and so on. It just makes the whole process of setting up your grading scheme and of creating quizzes a lot quicker, easier, and less with less cognitive load, which is always handy for me. And I think you'll find the older you get, the more you'll appreciate that. So as with other quizzes, you can set assignment groups. If you use assignment groups for weighting of your grades in the grade book. You have the usual options to display grades, usually as points. You do not get to choose submission type because that's meaningless. They're going to take the quiz online. What it is, the reason that this is even showing at all, this submission type block, is that Canvas is reusing some computer code for that they use in their assignments tool in new quizzes. Indeed, new quizzes, as I said, are sort of almost more like assignments in Canvas than were like classic quizzes. So just ignore this thing right here. It won't let you change anything anyway, as you can see. Then you have the assign to block, just like the one that you have with classic quizzes or assignments or graded discussions, where you can assign the quiz to any, either by default to everyone, all the students in the course, or to specific students if you want to give some students early access to a test or late access because they're going to be out of town or something, or in the hospital. God knows, that's been all too common lately, and so on. All the capability of the assign block that you normally have is the same in new quizzes, so there's nothing new there. So when you create a new quiz, the things you're going to have to do are give it a name and assign it a number of possible points. And then the process diverges further from how we create classic quizzes. Instead of having a tab across, a couple of tabs across the top of the page here, where in one case we can set test options and in the other case we can add questions, to start creating a classic quiz, you just click this build button here in the lower right. And you go to the classic quiz creation tool. And we've got, we're immediately presented with the interface wherein we can add questions, unlike in classic quizzes where first it forces us to, or it first presents us with the page where we can set test options. So here's where we're going to start adding questions. If you want to set up your course behavior, your course option, your test options first, you click on the settings tab up here at the top. And you can do this before you add questions or after, it doesn't matter. Let's just go ahead and do it beforehand. And here are all the settings options that you have for new quizzes. Some of them are similar or identical to what you had in classic quizzes, but there's some new possibilities here as well. First off, shuffle questions. Shuffle questions allows you to shuffle questions, as I said earlier, for the entire test. And you can do that just by turning that on, rather than having to jump through a bunch of hoops to make that work. So if you want to set the test up so that no two students get the questions in the same order, you just turn on that switch right there, and you're good to go. Shuffle answers, we mentioned. You can set that there. You can also have the test presented one question at a time. If you do that, you get the option to either allow or disallow backtracking. I don't know, anybody ever used the one question at a time?
I have. I've used it.
Do you allow them to go back?
Yeah, I do, because for one reason is for time, so that they can, if they need to go back to it, they can do what they can and then go back.
Gotcha.
If the questions are shuffled, in my case, it's not problematic, because they all have different tests in different orders. So
gotcha. Yeah, it's I just wonder if anybody had the nerve to disallow backtracking. I can see some really unhappy students in that. I
Yeah,
would.
I would recommend that if you're going to do one question at a time, that you allow them to have the backtracking versus not. If
Yeah,
they want
because
to sit on all the
the
time.
classic strategy in taking multiple choice taking objective tests is to go through and answer the ones you know, and then go back and start working on the ones you're not quite as instantly comfortable with. That way you don't run out of time and not answer some questions you knew the answers to. And disallowing backtracking prohibits that. And that just seems like I've never understood why that option was there. Oh, well, that's just one person's opinion. You can require an access code if you're sending the student to a proctor. You can give the proctor the access code, and the student can't access the test until they're in front of the proctor. That's true in classic quizzes as well. You can, of course, set a time limit. And the default is no time limit. The student can take as long as they like. You can set hours and minutes now for time limit. Time limit, of course, is the most important security feature in the Canvas testing engine, either classic quizzes or new quizzes, because if certainly students taking online quizzes can look up the answers online. They can copy and paste the question, paste it into Google, and they'll get the answer. I mean, that's not difficult to do, but it's time consuming. If you give them unlimited time and they're inclined to do so, they can cheat pretty easily on an online quiz, particularly if it's if they're objective questions that can be answered quickly with a click. And so the way you prevent that is you just don't give them time to do it. You allocate a reasonable amount of time for the questions that you provided in the quiz, and you don't give them more than that. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add, especially I like that you talked about the time limit. I was just going to add in about the no backtracking. So I don't turn that off. I haven't used that feature, but I have a friend who did. And so in case it helped people, I was going to share why they did cut off use backtracking. And it came down to the issue with the time limit. So they would shuffle the questions on like an exam, and the goal there being everyone's not seeing the same question at the same time and things like that. But if there's backtracking, they figured, well, you could just always go back and then you still essentially can find the questions that a friend had or something.
Yeah.
And so they turned off backtracking, but they also turned off a time limit. So they made sure that their questions were not like objective, what is this definition or something like that. So it depends on what you're assessing.
Exactly.
But they use that and they like that
questions
idea.
You're using, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, there are reasons. Another reason for preventing backtracking, of course, is that 70% of the time when a student changes the answer on a question, they change it from right to wrong. So it's, in some ways, it's a protective mechanism, but that's a debate that each of us has to, or a decision that each of us has to make. New quizzes, another nice feature of new quizzes, they have a built-in calculator, on-screen calculator. So if you're giving numeric type questions where the student would need a calculator, you can allow the calculator on any quiz. You can just turn it on globally for the quiz, and they'll have a button to bring up the calculator on any test question if they need it. We'll also see when we create questions in new quizzes that you can allow or disallow a calculator by question, so that you can decide, you're gonna give them access to a calculator in one question and not in another. You can allow multiple attempts, just as you can with classic quizzes. You have, in that event, you have to pick the score that you want to keep, whether it's highest, average, latest, or first. If you're going to keep the first one, I don't understand that. Why give them multiple attempts? the default attempts, if you allow multiple attempts, is unlimited. They can take it as often as they like, and you can set that to limited and set the number of attempts. And here's that option to require a waiting period between attempts, so they don't get frustrated and jump right in again and don't take the time to think about what they how things went on the first attempt. And you can control what feedback students can see once they submit their quiz. None of this feedback is allowable until the student has submitted the quiz. But once they've submitted the quiz, you can control what feedback they get, just as you can with classic quizzes, and the results and the options are similar. You can uncheck all to hide result view and show submission confirmation only. So if you don't check any of this, all the student gets is a confirmation that the test was submitted. They don't even see their score. So the first option is to show them the score, but that shows them the overall score and what they can see whether they got a question right or wrong as well by how many points they got for it. It will not, if you check this, it doesn't show them the right answer on questions that they got wrong, but it does show them which questions they got right. You can show points possible as well. You can show items, you can choose to show the items and questions so that they can actually see the questions. And you can choose to or not to show the students what they answered on that question. If you do that, you have the option to indicate whether that was correct or incorrect. And you can show, if you choose, the correct answer if they miss it. But you don't have to. You can show them all of this up to here and not show them the correct answer. And you can also choose to, if you type feedback into your questions as you create them, certain feedback in case the student gets it right, another bit of feedback if they get it wrong. And you can show that or not, as you prefer, when they submit the test. Or if you don't restrict any of that, or if you don't set any of that, or if you don't restrict student view at all, they're going to get all of that when they submit the test. So you probably do want to set this up. So those are your settings options. Similar in many cases to those you have in classic quizzes now, but with some nice additions. So now if we go back to the Build tab, that's where we can create questions. And the interface is streamlined over what we have in classic quizzes. Instead of having buttons and menus and so on, we just have this plus sign here. That will allow us to create our first question. I can, of course, edit the title at this point if I wish to, by clicking on it. And I can add test instructions. Like answer all the questions. Or more meaningful instructions if you have some advice you want to give to them at the time. I always included that in my questions because it was common in my day for instructors to penalize students for guessing, for writing something. If their answer was just totally off the beam, not only did they lose the points, but they lost an extra little bit. I had some real sons of guns instructors. But oops, I didn't save that. Note here that you are using the old rich content editor, as I mentioned. And that is one of the aggravating things for us. It doesn't make any difference to the students, but it's a little aggravating to us when we're creating questions and instructions and things like that, to have to use the old interface. to add a question, I just click this blue circle with a plus sign in it. And I'm given an option to choose the question types that I want to use. Or the type question I want to add at this point, like a multiple choice question. Just select that. And I give it a title. The title is optional. You don't have to title the question. This is not the question. This is a title like multiple choice question 1. And this will allow you to search for these questions later and things like that. If I click on add question stem, it gives me that rich content editor, the old rich content editor again, and I can type the question like, why is there air?
Hey, Dave,
Yes.
where you just put in multiple choice question 1, does that show to the students?
I don't
Because
believe.
I'm thinking it might be
No, I
nice
don't
to
think
put
so.
multiple
No.
choice and then a brief little topic,
No, don't think so.
so the students won't see it.
The students don't see that. I don't think so. Let's see. I'm drawing a blank on that one. I don't think
That's
so.
all right.
I don't
Understood.
think so, but we'll see here when we.
And Thekema has her hand up.
Yes. Kim, how are you?
Hi, Dave. I'll wait. Go ahead and go through this and I'll wait till you finish this because I
right.
have a question on if you would show us the fill in the blank, do another one that has a fill in the blank.
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, now we, why is there air? The classic answer, and when I was growing up in the 60s, was why not? So there's my first answer. And I just keep typing answers. Another one was volcanoes. Oop. Next one might be cow emissions. If I need, oh, I got volcanoes in there twice and I misspelled it. That's interesting. So let's take that one out. All right, so we got why not, volcanoes, cow emissions, or my particular favorite multiple choice answer. And I only have, it gives me 3 possible answers. And to get more, I just click add answer. Actually, it gives me 4 possible answer blanks. But if I need more, I just click add answer. And this would be all of the above. Oh, shoot. I hit one question too many. Let's go back. There we go. Or one click too many there. So I have my possible answers. I have to manually indicate the correct answer to Canvas, just as I do with classic quizzes. Canvas is not smart enough to figure out the answer to that question. When it gets to that point, folks, they won't need us anymore. So let's hope that doesn't happen anytime soon. So all of the above.
Yeah,
Yes.
but you can't include all of the above if you shuffle your answers.
That's right. You can't. You notice I didn't turn on shuffle answers.
If the classic is when they don't shuffle, to have none of the above followed by all of the above.
Right. Indeed.
April Fool's tests.
Yeah. Double secret quizzes. Okay. So yeah, you got to be careful about using all the above if you shuffle your answers. Notice that you can control that question by question. If you set to the option to shuffle answers in multiple choice questions globally throughout the quiz, you can turn that off for this question here by unchecking this box. So you have control over whether you shuffle the answers question by question, which is a real nice new feature. You can choose or not to show the on-screen calculator. There's not any reason for them to have a calculator here, but if I want it, I just check that. And I can even set different point values for different answers. I haven't quite figured out how that works or why you would do that. We don't use the outcomes tool, so we're not going to worry about that. And if we have item banks, we're going to talk about item banks in a little while, we can add this question to an item bank as we create it, if we're building test banks of our own questions. And we have a point value that we can set. The default is 1. We'll make that 2 points. So that's all there is to creating a multiple choice question. And I got to remember to click done so it saves it. Ask me how I know that. And there's our multiple choice question. And we can proceed to add more questions. If I suddenly decide that I want a question that to be added before this one, I can use this plus sign up here, or I can just go to the bottom of the question I've just added and add the next question. And Kima, you requested a fill in the blank question, so let's do that. Here's our fill in the blank creation interface. And we scroll down and there's question 2 automatically numbered. Oh, let's look. Yeah, it does. It does show the question title, but I'm not sure it's going to show that to students. We'll see what this looks like to a test student here in a minute and see if that's in there. I'm just not going to bother with the question title in this case. And fill in the question stem. How about a fill in the blank question for me? I come up with one. Let's see. And it tells you right here, type a statement and surround a word with backticks. Which
Dave,
is,
it's
yes, go
Christine.
ahead.
Good morning. I just have a question before you move on. Are we still working on the same, the one quiz with
Yes,
different options?
Still the same quiz.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right, so
So let me ask a question, James. So is the fill in the blank option a different version of multiple choice?
no, it's just let's see, let me type one here. I didn't have one ready, so I need to come up with one. In order to drive a nail, one would normally use and then a backtick is a single quote, I think. Find that out. Hammer. Backtick. Probably better to spell wood, right? Oh no, that's not it. It's the key on the keyboard, upper left corner. That little. I guess they picked that because they weren't using it for anything else. Okay, good. Now it recognizes that as a blank, and I get these other options down here. I got it right there. Okay.
When you said upper left, that's the one that's next to the left of the one.
Right above, on my keyboard, it's right above the tab key, just to the left of the
Yeah,
one.
right.
And
Thank
it's got a tilde, a little wavy line, and a backtick.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. and of course, different keyboards may have things in different places. So you got to figure out where the to use this fill in the blank, you got to figure out where the back tick is on your keyboard. Answer type, you can set a drop down or a word bank. Open entry is the normal, where they're just going to type it in. Text match. The default is just that whatever they type contains the word hammer. If they type extra text like a hammer or something like that, it will count it right. Or you can go to close enough. My objection to fill in the blank questions has always been, okay, fine. The student knows the answer, they type it in and they mistype, they hit the wrong key and misspell it, or maybe they don't know how to misspell the word correctly, but they know the answer. Do they deserve credit for it? Well, I always figured, yeah, probably. I'm not teaching spelling here. If they can get close, it's something that I can look at and say, okay, that's fine. Great, but they get it counted wrong and the system marks it wrong. And unless I go through and I look at every quiz, I'm not going to know that they got, within one letter of the answer and still got it counted wrong. That doesn't seem fair. So new quizzes have all sorts of ways you can address that issue. In classic quizzes, you can enter other common misspellings as words that you will accept or strings of text that you will accept. But then you have to think of every possible way the student might misspell the word, and that's impossible, obviously. In the case of these questions, you can use the new quizzes, you can use close enough. And it uses something called the Levenshtein distance. It's an algorithm that goes through, and the longer the word, the more leeway it gives them. I'm not going to go through the individual algorithm here right now. I looked it up one time and it was quite interesting. But there's a Levenshtein distance that you can set and so on. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this right now, but close enough is pretty cool. And the default values for the close enough, for the Levenshtein distance and so on, are pretty good. So Canvas will use an algorithm to determine whether the answer is close enough or not, which gives the student a little leeway. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, just a question about that, because it has the contains answer. So let's say someone answered a steel hammer. So they included steel, but you just cared that it had hammer in it, but they'd mistyped hammer. So in that respect, I guess I'm trying to ask, is there like a combination of that, of where like it contains hammer, but it's also close enough versus, they just.
Yes, it would still give them the benefit of the doubt on that, I think.
Thank you.
You bet. Or you can insist on an exact match if spelling is an issue. You can still specify alternate correct answers, or you can do a regular expression match, which I'm not getting into. I'm not enough of a logician to, to explain that to you. So you've got some really sophisticated options here for improving the student's chance for getting the fill in the blank question right if they know the answer, and making it less likely that they're going to miss it because they mistyped it. Mm-hmm.
Can you have some acceptance in there for cultural differences?
Well, this is
where if they have it wrong, you can go in and manually accept it.
You can always go in and override override a question, how much credit the student gets for a question in the speed, but that requires you to bring it up in the speed grader and go through the quiz. And you can do that with classic quizzes or with new quizzes.
Okay, thank you.
But that involves an awful lot of time and effort on your part. This does partially, at least, account for cultural differences, as well as spelling skill and everything else. So at least you've got some realistic ways to mitigate the possibility that the student is going to know the answer and get it wrong, which is all too common with fill in the blank questions that are graded by machine or by algorithm. And this makes it a little less likely that's going to happen.
No, you know what, that brings up another question that's connected to what I wanted to say before is, so you had meant there was a functionality about having the points for any question. Can a student get partial points for any given question?
Yes.
If you have like, and then how is that differentiated by the system as opposed to by the instructor?
It very well, the instructor can always, as I say, override the credit given by the system. So you can always do that. On certain question types like matching and multiple answer questions, where the multiple choice question where there can be more than one right answer, the student, the system will give partial credit.
Yeah, I saw that when I was setting up the exam that I was doing, and I was like, well, how does it give partial credit?
It goes through it depending on that varies with the question type, and it goes through an algorithm to decide. And we can look those algorithms up that Canvas uses and see exactly how that works. We don't really have time for that right now here, but it is possible to see how Canvas computes partial credit.
So like, for example, if I have a matching question that has 5 pairs of matches and they match 3, but not all 5, that would be an example, right?
It would give you can give partial credit in that case.
Right.
Yeah. Or you can choose to require them to get everything right in order to get credit. That's your prerogative.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
On that same topic, if I may, if
Yes.
I remember, I think I read that for like the kind of question we're doing right now, the fill in the blank. So if you were using this to fill in multiple blanks or multiple drop downs,
Yes.
is my understanding that the new quizzes does not do partial credit? Like if they
Doesn't
got 2 of the blanks
partial
correct and
credit
not
on fill in the blanks yet. It will do that. Let's go back to the to that. Here we go. Under grading. Here we go. Partial credit. Does it on multiple answer and matching right now. And it does not do it on fill in the blank yet. If you have multiple blanks. So it also won't do it on ordering or categorization questions, which are new question types where students might get part of the question right and part of it wrong. It's going to be all or nothing in those cases at this point in time. They are going to fix that, they say, before so that they can award partial credit for ordering and categorization questions as well. Good questions all. And so there's a fill in the blank question. Click done. We can add that one to it. And we can keep adding questions. We're creating questions from scratch in the quiz and make the entire quiz that way if we wish. If we don't wish to do that, if we have some item banks available to us from which we can select questions that we've used before, we can click add and go to the little piggy bank icon up here, which is the symbol for item banks in Canvas. And that will give us a list of the item banks that we have in our course. I don't have any in this course right now, but as an administrator, if people have shared item banks to you, you can select them here. Or as an administrator, I have access to all the item banks on the system, so I can select all banks. And there's a bunch of, this gives you an idea. This is quite a long, 16 pages of question banks here. And this gives you an idea of how many people are actually using new quizzes on our system right now. Quite a few. And some have been using it for quite some time. Some of you probably have been. But in my case, I don't want to go through 16 pages to look for a particular question item bank. So let's say I want something having to do with chemistry. The only thing I actually have any credentials in. And I've got one chemistry question bank available to me. I can select that question bank. And here's a question bank. That's what a question bank looks like. You can add questions to question banks, just as you do. And
So David,
yes,
so David, if in this example, I see that there are pictures. How do we upload pictures? Because I was trying to do that and I couldn't see how to do that.
well, probably the reason you didn't see how to do that is you had to do it using the old rich content editor. If I want to add an image, say, to this question when I'm creating it, I have to, let's see, go to the question. Go to the question text here, and I get this rich content editor. And the image upload options were under this icon, the little,
Okay.
like an icon that you might have on a digital camera for showing, is a
Right.
photo icon. If we click that, then we can browse for an image we might have on our hard drive. I don't think I have an image of a stirring rod here, so I'll just have to pick something at random and open that and import it. And now you've added the image. I don't know if you can do that for individual questions. Let me see. Yes, you can. Oh no, that's feedback. No, you can't do it. You can't do that in for individual answers, I should say, in new quizzes at this point in time. I don't believe. Oh yes, you can. I'll take that back. Never mind. All you have to do is click into that, and you do have that option. So you can add images both for question text and for individual answers. So if your answers in a multiple choice question needed to be images, you can do that. And you just use that image right there. We've forgotten that because it's been a year and a half or 2 years since we've had to use this old rich content editor interface. That's why I brought that up earlier. That's a bit of a pain. Good question.
Dave, I have a question. Are you going to cover multiple item banks? For instance, I'm working in a development shell, and I created half a dozen banks by modules, module 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on.
Right.
And when I go into that shell, it says I don't have any for this course, but if I click all, I see them all. Now, right. Are those available to everybody in the district? Only on me? All of what?
Not unless you have deliberately shared them. No.
Okay.
Okay.
So
they're available. When you hit all question banks, you get the ones that you have access to.
Okay. And I guess you'll show us how to move those into different shells or different classes later.
Indeed, how to well, anything
manage them.
you create, if you click all banks, you'll see all the ones that you've created.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all you have to do to pull up a question bank that's in another course.
Right.
And when I do that, I see all of them because I'm a system administrator. I have access to everybody's account, everybody's question banks. Though I don't go in and prove around in them. Okay, so to select a question for your quiz out of a question bank, you just click the plus button next to that question, and it's immediately added to your quiz at the bottom. There it is. So you can go through and you can select questions one at a time. You can pick specific questions that you want to use. With classic quizzes, we also have the option to have Canvas randomly select questions from a question bank for us. And you have that option in new quizzes as well.
On that note, before you leave, I have a question.
Yes.
Because in Classic, in order to shuffle the questions, you had to identify less number of questions for the exam than the total bank itself, correct? And then it would shuffle. And
Yes.
I asked this question to Canvas about new Classic. Did you have to do the same? And I was told no. So
Okay.
I had
Well,
a think of 40 questions, and I wanted them to be shuffled, and they told me that I could have all 40 questions and they would be shuffled, and I didn't have to have a limited number to do that. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the old workaround in classic quizzes for shuffling the order of the questions for for different students, is to create a question set in Canvas that contains all of the questions in a question bank, and then select and have classic quizzes just take 5 of those. It will then, I'm sorry, no, never mind. What you have to do is, in order to shuffle the questions in a quiz, in classic quizzes, you have to copy all of the questions from the quiz into a question bank, and then create in your course, in your quiz that you're create a question set that selects all of the questions from a particular question bank, and that will then present those questions in a random order. So it's a, like I say, it's a kludge, it's a workaround, it's a Rube Goldberg machine that works, but it's a pain. With new quizzes, all you have to do is select that setting right at the top that says shuffle questions. So you don't have to go through any of that with new quizzes. Save you 30 minutes probably every time you create a quiz. Sorry about that.
So let's say in new quizzes, I have an item bank that has 50 questions, and I only want to use 25 of those questions. Do I still have the functionality to limit the questions that are being
Oh, yes,
offered?
absolutely. I'm about to show you that. Let's say you want to create a random block of questions in a quiz from a question bank that have Canvas pick a certain number of questions out of that question bank randomly, so that each student gets a different set, or at least somewhat different set of questions from that question bank. You go to add, the add button here, and you click the item bank. And let me pull, and it remembers that item bank I was using a minute ago, so it brought that one back up. In order to create a random block of questions within the quiz that will be selected, different group for a different set of questions for each student from that question bank, you click this all random button here. And that adds a question bank to your, or a question block to your quiz. And that's, I put that at the bottom here. And it's asked me to it's assuming right off the bat that I want all of the questions in that question bank. There were apparently 30 questions in that question bank. And if I leave this as it is, it's going to it's going to put all 30 of those questions into this quiz. They're going to be in a different order for each student, but they're going to get all 30. To change that, I go over here to the edit button, the pencil. And instead of use all questions, I randomly select questions, and I specify how many questions I want. That was a 30 question bank. If I want reasonable randomization so that there's not a lot of similarity between the block of questions that each student gets, I probably don't want to select more than half of just as a rule of thumb, don't want to select more than half the questions in the question bank. So maybe I'll just select 10 questions for each student. I can also set the points per question for those. I can't specify the point value question by question like I can if I'm adding the questions one at a time to the quiz, but I can at least specify the point value for each of those questions in that randomly selected block. For this reason, you generally don't want to mix question types in item banks or in question banks and classic quizzes, which have a similar functionality.
So let me make sure I'm understanding what you're saying here. We have this exam right here.
Right.
Within this exam, you've created a block set that will have 10 questions. And now, is that from a different item bank, or is it the same item bank?
Because I inserted this from the item bank.
From the same item bank.
Same item bank. Right.
Okay, so then how do you make sure that from this set, with the other questions outside of this set aren't copied from that set? Because you're using the same item bank, right?
Oh, yeah. You're the I am. And in this case, that's a possibility.
Okay.
Okay, so you would probably not overtly select questions or specifically select questions and do a random block from the same bank.
Right.
I only have one bank, so I'm having to do that.
Right. So unless you had, so I guess the function, the instructions or the system itself will not differentiate because you've said random. So it'll randomly select, and it could randomly select a question twice, right? Inside this set.
You could end up with the same question twice if you did what I did here and specifically select a question from the question bank and do a random selection. It's not going to sense that you've already used one of those questions and not use it.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
So you probably don't want to select specific questions and pull a random block from the same bank like I'm doing here.
But you could take, and if you know that you want to do something like this, take those specific questions, create a separate.
Exactly. You move them to another item bank.
Move them out of, right. And then you could do that without replication, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. So I'm adding, if I click done here, now it's adding just 10 questions to this quiz, question 4 through 13. And it's pulling them randomly at a value of 10 of them randomly at 1 point per question. So that's how we generate a random question set or a random block of questions in a new quiz. A very different process or a somewhat different process from what we do in classic quizzes. And whether you like it better or worse, it's, it's different. And I could keep going with this. I can, of course, if I want to pull questions randomly from more than one item bank, I just make another block and select a different item bank and pull questions from it. A single random block can't pull questions from more than one item bank in Canvas. We used to have that capability in Blackboard, but we don't have it in Canvas anymore. So you have to make multiple random blocks pulling from different question banks if you want to do that, which is not that big a deal. All right, so we have our quiz. Let's say that's enough. If we're done adding questions, we just click this return button here, and that will take us back. Whoop. Return further than I remembered. There we go. But that automatically saves the questions. If I go back to build, I've got my quiz there. The settings we've already set. Let's take a look at the moderate options here. This is where we can allow extra time. I can, let's say I want test one student to have double time, except I don't think, come to think of it, I don't think I set a time limit on this quiz. Let me do that. So this will work. Let's say this is 10 minutes. And return. Come on. And go to moderate. Now I can moderate say I want this question, the time limit for this quiz is 10 minutes. I can give this student extra attempts, more attempts than the other students can have, if that's required by disability regulations. Or I can give the student more time, and I can give them additional time, or I can remove the time limit altogether. If I say give additional time, it asks me how many minutes. I can say an extra 5 minutes, say. And that I get the indication here that this student is going to have 5 minutes more than everybody else to do this test. And I can, of course, do that student by student, selecting the DSPS students or students who need extra time for whatever reason, or extra attempts. This is fairly similar to how we did this in classic quizzes, but we have the added capability here. If I want this student to have additional time on all of their quizzes, I don't have to do this for each quiz. I can click this pencil icon here, and under time adjustments, I can either give additional a set number of minutes, but this is going to be applied to every quiz. And if you have like an hour-long exam versus a 10-minute long daily quiz, you probably don't want to add the same amount of time to each one of those. So you can go to the time limit multiplier option. And let's say the students you're required to give double time to a certain set of student or to a particular student. You just set that multiplier to 2.0 and save. And you wouldn't add individual 5 minutes and the multiplier as well. So I can go in, I can take that individual multiplier out. There we go. So this student is going to get the test time multiplied by 2 on all of their quizzes. And you don't have to go through and moderate each quiz to do that, which can save if you have several DSPS students in your course, that can save you quite a bit and several quizzes, that can save you quite a bit of time. So that's a nice new feature in new quizzes. And at any time, of course, I can go back and I can add more questions. I can edit questions. If I discover that I picked the wrong answer or something like that, I can always go back and edit a question before the quiz becomes available to the students. And once I'm done with all that, I just click return, and that quiz then goes into my quizzes list. There it is. There it is. I can publish it. I can put a link to it in a module, just as I would with a classic quiz, and the students can take it. The experience for the students is pretty much the same as it is in classic quizzes. Let me just put that quiz into a module here. Module is published. I'll add a quiz to a module, and I'll put this one that I just made in. I'll make sure it's published. It is. I didn't set any availability dates on this quiz, so it should be available right now. If I now go to student view, that quiz should still be there, and there it is. Student clicks on that. There's no due date set. They're told the time limit is 10 minutes. If I had set due dates and availability dates and so on, those would be listed here. And then the student can just begin the quiz. So that's pretty much similar to what they had before. The screen looks a little different, so that might throw them a little bit. If you start using new quizzes, wouldn't be a bad idea to put a practice quiz in your course and let students play with it. And here's I didn't set one question at a time because I hate that. I hated it. I would have hated it as a student. So I don't do that. But why is there error? I'll miss one. Let's try. And question 3, stirring rod would be the right answer. And then here are my randomized questions. And by the way, the question about whether that question title shows up, it doesn't show up to students. So that just established that. Then I can go through and I can just tree this. And when I get to the bottom, I can submit. Students are given a counter. And when they submit, they have a submit button at the top and at the bottom. When they submit, they're warned if they haven't answered questions, and they can go back and answer those. Or if there's no point, they can just submit. And they get, since I didn't set any of those restrictions, they get pretty much everything in the way of feedback after they submit. So it's to your advantage. So you want to go through and set those feedback restrictions to control what the students see. They get a graphic representation of how well they did on the test, not too well, and how long they took and what score they got, because I didn't restrict any of that. See here, it's given them, they can see they missed this question, what they answered, and the correct answer, because I did not restrict any of that. That's a little different from the way it works in classic quizzes, where if you don't set anything, they don't see anything. They get the score and that's it. If you don't select any of those options under the feedback block. Whereas in this one, it fails on. That is, if you don't set any restrictions, they get to see everything that they could possibly see once they submit the test, which of course gives them the ability to call up their friend in the course and say, I got it right here. You know, I can tell you exactly, at least with mine. Though, of course, that random block would throw them because they wouldn't have the same questions in the random block. So that selecting questions randomly from a question bank or an item bank in new quizzes is a great way to increase test security online, because the students don't get the same set of questions. This presupposes, of course, that you have carefully vetted all of the questions in the item bank that you are using, because as we well know, the question banks provided by publishers are riddled with errors, inconsistencies, ambiguities. So you really, if you're going to randomly select questions from a question bank, you need to be pretty certain that all those questions are good questions before you use it. Okay. So that's pretty much the process of creating and moderating and grading, or having the system grade new quizzes. Very similar to what you used before. And it works like a charm. We've seen no lower reliability on new quizzes than we have on Canvas or classic quizzes in that regard.
Dave, I have a question.
Good.
I see that we're talking about like the results. Can the students take it again and again, like you did with old quizzes?
You
If I
can
choose
set,
to?
yes, you can make it possible
Okay.
for them to do so.
Right, okay.
That's not done by default.
Right,
but
right. I have to set it. Right. Okay.
You have to set it. That's in your settings
Okay.
where you can, and it gives you a little warning here. Somebody took this quiz. You know, be careful what you change. But yeah, you have allow multiple attempts there.
Okay.
By default, the student will get one attempt. But if you allow multiple attempts, you can set.
Okay, got it.
You can make it unlimited, or you can make it limited, and you can set the number of attempts.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
You bet.
Dave, I'd like to share something. If you go back, can you go back to the exam itself?
Yes. To the questions.
To the questions.
That would take, I'd go back to the build tab here.
Back to the build. And so, but you don't have any, well, you do have points. One of the things that I learned just this past weekend was that the number of points that is added up, and I don't see it on here, but across from build, the number of actual points that you have in an exam will show. So earlier in the settings, you had not here, but in the other like detailed settings, if you had like a specific number of points, and I think you had like, I don't know.
Which you have to. Yeah, I had 20 points, right? 20
points in there. One of the things that I found is that, and you mentioned this, so if you have 20 points there, but here, it will add up the actual points. And if you want those to match, it won't do it automatically. You'd have to figure out what these points are. Right. And then you have to you'd have to go back and manually put that in, whereas classic, you didn't have to do that.
Right.
And
well, what you would do in this event, if you wanted the numbers to match, is you just go back and edit the quiz, from the quizzes tool, and change that possible points. But the whole idea here, though, is that you don't have to do that. You can select a point value that you want the test to represent in your grade book, in your weighting scheme in your grade book, and Canvas will do all the arithmetic for you and make that work. So the number of points that you specify doesn't have to match the number of points that the individual questions would add up to.
Yes, that's true. However, when the students are when they're taking the exam, because you have to set up what the points are there.
Right.
And if it says something different than what will actually be in the grade book, it'll be a conflict. Because
it'll be a different number.
Right, because the students will see 20 when actually it's more than 20 using your example, right?
Right.
So that could be just, I just
That
think
could be
everybody should be
confusing,
aware.
and that would require you to explain that to the students, indeed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just know, and it took us a while for Canvas and I to figure that out. So.
Well, yeah, and it's the way that those points are manipulated in new quizzes is very different, and has significant advantages to you, but it could be confusing to students. The one way to just avoid that in the grade book is just to report the quiz grade as a percentage rather than as a number of points. And that will eliminate that. They'll know that they got 80% of the points, for instance. But then that adds other issues if you're having the students, if you're computing your grades just by adding up points and so on, and giving a point total as a final grade instead of a percentage grade, then you got other explanations you have to make. So yeah, it's just a different way of looking at quiz points in Canvas, and it has advantages and disadvantages over the old system. I think more advantages than disadvantages, but that's a personal judgment, not a sure thing. Good point, though. Okay, so let's see where we are here in our PowerPoint. We've created a new quiz. There are 4 new question types that I just don't have time to show you how to create them right now. So I have given here in this slide links to tutorials on how to create stimulus questions, ordering questions, hotspot questions, and categorization questions.
Dave, can you explain what hotspot questions are, please?
Yeah, I will. Oh, I will. I'm going to show you an example of each of these real quick here in a moment.
Okay, thanks.
I'm just saying I don't have time in this session to show you each of this. So I've done 2 separate tutorials. You can select them. I'm going to share this. Let me, before I leave today, I'll share this slide deck with you, but you don't have to access the tutorials through that. You can go to our on-demand site at sdccdolvid.org, our tutorial site. What do you mean? You're not doing it? Okay, it's thinking about it. I'm not sure why it's taking a moment here. Oh, uh-oh. Hope my tutorial site isn't down. I was in there earlier. There it goes. Okay. Doesn't normally take that long to come up. Ooh, that's all right. Now we have this little slideshow or spinner at the top.
What's the address, Dave? SDC. What is the address?
The address is, let me put that in the chat tool. sdccdolvid.org, O-R-G. There it is.
OLVID, what does it stand for?
The SDCCD online video.
Oh.
.org. But we didn't want people have to type all of that.
OLID, what is it? SDCCDOL?
VID.org. It's in your chat.
Online vid. Okay.
Yeah. Along with a link to it. But you can just search for new quizzes here, or you can just go to this spinner at the top, or this slideshow at the top here, and there's a using new quizzes in Canvas entry that there popped up there. And if you select that by clicking on the name, this gives you a series of tutorials that covers everything I've covered here today. and things that I don't have time to go over right now, including activating the thing, creating new quizzes, migrating classic quizzes and question banks to new quizzes. And then there's a tutorial on each of the new question types using stimulus questions, ordering questions, hotspot questions, and categorization questions. So these tutorials will show you how to create those question types. Just what I can do briefly here is show you what they look like. I've got another quiz here that I can pull up. Oops.
So does this link take us directly to this, Dave, or do we have to?
Yes, it takes you directly to the Open On Demand site.
No, but then we have to put in.
And you have to find that. I can give you the link for this specific.
Okay, great.
Tutorial as well. Let me do that.
Thank you.
All righty. There that is. Okay. That'll take you to this specific set of tutorials.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, so let's take a quick look at two more things. One is, let's say you have a bunch of classic quizzes in your course and you want to administer them through the new quizzes engine. You want to convert them to new quizzes. How can you do that? Well, you can either do that individually, quiz by quiz, or you can do it en masse during a course copy. Let's see, that's not the one I need. There we go. If I go to quizzes here, let's say I have here's a classic quiz. And I can have both classic quizzes and new quizzes in my course at the same time. Interestingly enough, it's possible to immediately identify a classic quiz versus a new quiz in the quizzes list. The new quizzes, the little icon, the spaceship icon, is filled in. With classic quizzes, it's just an outline. So I know this is a classic quiz. If I want to make this, if I want to copy this as a new quiz, convert it to a new quiz, I just go to the context menu for that particular quiz out here to the right, click on that and select Migrate. And this option only appears if you've activated new quizzes in your course. And it migrates the quiz. Depending on the size of the quiz, that can take anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes, but it won't take too long here, I don't think.
Question about that. Will it keep an original or will it just change it?
It keeps the original and there's the new one. This is a classic quiz. This is a new quiz. So that's all there is to converting one classic quiz to a new quiz. And it takes almost no time. It's trivial. Also, when you copy a course, if you want to convert all of the quizzes in the course, all the classic quizzes in the course, to new quizzes, there's an option for that in the copy dialog now. So if I go and let's say I want to copy or to import another course into this one, and I want to copy a Canvas course, and let's just pick here. Let's see, Sandbox.
Dave, while you're doing that, can I make a comment? I would strongly suggest, because when I did that just this past Friday for converting my exam,
Right.
not everything migrated. So I would just strongly suggest
Checking.
Make sure that you check it and save a copy of your classic questions in case something changes.
Well, you will still have the classic quizzes in the or in the source course.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about it's not going to destroy them.
Yeah. But what I guess maybe I should have said, don't delete it from your source without checking to make sure.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely.
Yeah. So, because I had to go back and put, and I don't know what happened, but not everything migrated. And then I migrated 2 courses and 1 course, 2 quizzes, and 1 quiz had 2 parts, and it only migrated 1 part and not the other one. So, and that could have been error on my part. I'm just saying, just check.
I don't know. I haven't seen that happen, but I haven't done it in a lot of complex courses either. So I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. And it's always a good idea after you do a course copy to do a quick check and make sure everything came over, because there have been known to be errors in those copies. Not often, and usually not terribly significant ones, but trust but verify. I don't often quote Ronald Reagan, but that's one of my favorites. Sorry about that. All right. So there's an option in the copy dialog now to import existing quizzes as new quizzes. So it will convert all the existing quizzes in the source course into new quizzes in one operation. And you don't have to do it quiz by quiz, if that's appropriate. It may or may not be. So that's a nice feature too that they've added fairly recently. Eventually, unfortunately, while that will convert quizzes, it won't convert question banks. Okay. If you want to convert your question banks to item banks that can be used with new quizzes, you have to do it 1 question bank at a time. And there's like a 7-step process for doing it. And this is something they have not fixed yet. That is, they haven't made it so that the question banks will automatically transfer as item banks. So there is a process that you can go through. It's somewhat lengthy, not difficult, just a little tedious. It's a workaround. I have a tutorial for that in our on our on-demand site. And let's see. I search for migration. Nope. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Search for new quizzes. See all of our tutorials having to do with new quizzes. And here's the tutorial we want: migrating classic quizzes and question banks. You've seen how to migrate a classic quiz. To migrate question banks, this is the tutorial you want. That is the bulk of the tutorial. Takes about 8 minutes to explain that. And there's this tutorial will show you how to do that. Let me put this link in the chat tool for you. So that tutorial will show you how to do that. That's one of the more popular tutorials I've ever put on YouTube. Lots of people have viewed that. And this is a way that you can, so if you use question banks a lot with your classic quizzes, you're going to need to know how to do this. And the process takes about 3 3 to 5 minutes per question bank once you've done it once. So it's going to be a little bit of an investment in time. Canvas swears, their instructor swears they're going to have that automated before long. They're working on it right now, but they haven't figured. And when you see the process, you'll see why it's a little involved. So that's worth a look. And finally, those extra question types, I just want to show you very quickly. I have a quiz here in this course that has, here's a categorization question. And actually, let's just view that as a student would see it. Oh, shoot. I didn't set that one. Darn it. Didn't set that one for multiple attempts. Let's see. Settings. Allow multiple attempts, unlimited. Okay, now that should do it. Now, if I go to student view, okay, begin. Okay. One of my favorite courses as an undergraduate was music appreciation. Here's a classic music appreciation question. Place the following composers into the appropriate musical periods. Don't omit those that don't fit in one of these periods. You have a list of composers down here and some boxes for the categories into which you want to put them. So, Johannes Brahms was a Baroque composer. I'm sorry, Brahms, excuse me, was Romantic. Johann Sebastian Bach was Baroque. Classical would include Mozart, Beethoven, though you can make an argument about Beethoven bridging the two, Haydn, and so on. So this is a categorization question. So it's a great way to test students' understanding of relationships between different items. And then you can just submit. The hotspot question that you ask a question about is another cool result. And there's how the results show and so on. Now I need to get out of student view and go back to that, to my quizzes, return. That's how you get out of new quizzes, is to return. And I'll go back to my quizzes list. And let's fix the ordering question here. So that I go to build, I can set that to multiple attempts. And yeah, I want to do that anyway. And now I can go to student view. Wonderful thing, student view. Go to the ordering question quiz and begin that. And with an I'm sorry, I was going to do the hotspot question. Let's do the ordering question, then I'll do the hotspot question. List these US presidents in chronological order by date of election. So you can order, you can have a series of items that you can force the student to order chronologically and by importance, by size, by mass, whatever. And let's see, date of election, that would be, geez, I don't think I remember the answers to this one, but you just move them about like so. and then submit. Submit. Gets graded. Oh, geez. I got it right. I'm amazed. All right. Or let's do the hotspot question. Return. Settings. No, quizzes, sorry. And let's get the hotspot quiz. I have to go to build to change anything on a quiz. And let's go to settings and change that to multiple attempts. Now I can return to my quizzes and I can go to student view. This is my favorite new question type. Begin. The student's taken that one before. You provide a picture and some instructions. In this case, click on the person in this photograph who earned 2 Nobel Prizes in science. One of the very few people to ever do that, and the only one in this photograph, which is of the 1929 Solvay conference in Geneva, I think. Notice there's one person who stands out in this picture by gender. That's Marie Sklodowska-Curie, who's the only one of all these graybeards to get 2 Nobel Prizes in science. One she shared with her husband and one she got on her own for her work with radium and radioactivity. Always found that a little interesting. So your charge here is to pick the person out, and you do that by just putting the cursor over them and click on them. And that puts a little symbol so you know you've selected the right person, and then you submit.
So question.
Yes.
So if, let's say you pick someone else, does it still have the circle?
Oh yeah, it would show the little circle on them. It doesn't give it away. You can pick any of these people, but in this case, I got it correct. And this is the feedback you get for that question. So you can lay out a series of instruments, for instance, and surgical instruments, and say, pick out the retractor, or pick out the hemostat, or something like that. Or you could have a series of animals, and which one of these is a primate, or whatever.
Okay, so stop for just a second.
Yeah.
So depending on the settings will determine whether they find that answer at that time or not, right?
Correct. Now, once they don't get the answer until they submit the test.
Okay, so they're not getting this while they're taking the test.
No, they would never get this while they're taking the test. It only happens after they submit, and it only happens if you or you can control what they see after they submit by editing those under settings for this quiz.
Yeah, by
edit these restrictions,
right?
Restrict student result view. And you have these options. If you don't set any of these options, they see everything. They see all of this. Correct answers, incorrect answers, what they got right, what they got wrong, their score, everything.
Okay, so question. If you have them, if you give them 2 attempts and you click everything except for the right answers.
Right.
They see all of this information after each attempt, or only after the final attempt?
After each attempt.
Okay.
So they would see, if they, after the first attempt, they would see what you've allowed them to see. And they would have that information in hand before they took the quiz the second time.
Okay. Okay. So But what happens if you set the settings for multiple attempts and they only do one out of the two? Then
That's the attempt that's going to be counted by default.
okay,
That won't cause any problems. They just won't get a second chance.
so the system won't wait for them to do a
No,
second one
It
to
will
give
not
them
wait for
all
the
the information.
second one. No,
Okay. Okay, thanks.
you bet.
Good question. Will you be able to set up multiple items? Let's say, and I know there was a question about JPEGs and different video files, but I'm thinking I'm a geographer, so I'm thinking I'm a map, for instance. Will you be able to set up 4 or 5 different features and say, you know, choose?
No, you'd have to, you can only have them select one item from an image at a time. So if you wanted to do something like that, you'd have to put in a series of hotspot questions using the same map each time with a different area selected.
Okay.
That's a good question. Yeah, it'd be nice if you could have
Yeah.
multiple selections on the same image, but that's not possible at this point in time.
Different maps.
That's a good question. Is that something that they are planning to possibly do? Or
I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that one, though.
so at this point, is it possible to upload video or not? Because
Oh,
you
yeah,
had-
absolutely. You can certainly put a video into a question. I tell you what, there's one more thing I want to show you, and then I'll treat that as a part of the question and answer period, but I want folks who need to go, who are still hanging on to see the other question type, to see that, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to put a video into a new quiz question, because that's a reasonable question. You just have to do it the old-fashioned way with the old rich content editor, but it's quite possible. One more, we have the turn. And go to quizzes. I have the stimulus question. Let me set that one to multiple attempts. You get to see that process over and over again. Go to build, go to settings, allow multiple attempts. Now I can return to my quizzes. That saves the change. And I can go to student view. And I can do quiz with stimulus question. And with a stimulus question, the student is presented with some information. It may be an image, like in this case, an image of the periodic table of the elements, or it could be a document that they have to read, or it could be a statement that they have to comment on. And that's called the stimulus for the question. They're then presented with a series of questions about that stimulus. In this case, which of the columns in the periodic table contains the most chemically inert elements? That would be this column, column 8. I'm sorry. Yeah, 8A. So I select that and next. And they would, of course, have to know which one was column 8A in this case. Which of the following elements will have chemical properties most similar to strontium? Well, I have to know that strontium is Sr. There it is. And my choices are rubidium, calcium, scandium, and beryllium. Calcium is in the same group in the periodic table, the same column. So they would have similar chemical properties.
Okay, question. So in this stimulus categorization, the answer options are always multiple choice?
No.
Oh, okay.
You could have an essay question here about this.
Okay.
You could use any question types. Good question. I just happened to have picked multiple choice because they're simple and quick. Now here's a fill in the blank. The nucleus of an atom of U-238 contains how many neutrons? Well, it's the atomic number. You can get that information off the periodic table. I'm not going to go through that. You can submit that. And then those were the three questions. So I got, since I didn't answer that last one, I got it 2/3 correct. And here's the feedback. Here's the stimulus, and here's the questions. Setting up these questions is something I'd like to have the time to show you, but I'm going to have to do that in a separate session sometime, because it's a process. You do have those tutorials that I showed you. Where I show you in those tutorials how to use each of these how to create each of these new question types: stimulus, ordering, hotspot, and categorization. They're not difficult to create at all. And they are a lot of fun. And they give you just a whole lot more options for testing students' knowledge of certain types of topics. Things that are difficult to test in a multiple choice question, for instance, are much more readily tested this way, particularly stuff involving visual or ordering or categorization type understanding, which is very difficult to do with some question types, but these give you a much better shot at that. All right. The first question we have on hand is how do you add video to a new quiz question? Let's go back and let me find return to my quizzes here. And let's just make a new question here in this quiz. I can edit this one. And let's say like a picture of a volcano or a movie, I should say, of a volcanic eruption taking place in this one, just for the heck of it. I can edit the question with the and I'm going to. I'm just going to. Oh shoot, that's right. Since I've taken that one, I already answered that one. It's going to fuss at me, so I'm just going to edit a copy of the question. All right. I can put that in the put that video in the question STEM box here. I get the old rich content editor. So how do I add a video? Well, I use the insert edit media button here. Looks like a little movie frame or film frame with a play button in it. I use this option. I'm going to embed the video. So I need, or I can just put a link to the video if I have it online. Let me think. I hope I picked the right example here. I need a video that I have on YouTube or Canvas Studio. Do either one. Videos from either place. I'm just searching for it here just a second. Shoot, I don't have that one. Okay. Let me see. What do I have that would be useful here? That's probably not a good choice then. Let's cancel out of that one and go to, let's just make a new question. And we'll make it here and we'll make an essay question. And view the following video. And describe the process for recording a PowerPoint narration in Zoom. And thank God we have spell check. That's handy. All right. But now I would need to add the video to this. I again go to the insert edit media button. I go to the embed option and I go to, I happen to have this video on YouTube. So I go to YouTube, I find that video, which is one that I made. Right here. I bring it up in YouTube. I hit the share button below the video, and I get the embed code for that video from YouTube. It's a somewhat similar process. If you have the video on Canvas Studio, you can also get an embed code for it. Now I go and I paste that embed code into this box and click OK. And now I have that video embedded in the question. If I save that question, and let's make sure this one is set to allow multiple attempts and that it's published. I believe it is. Yes, it is. So I can go to Student View and go to that quiz and begin it. And there's that first question. So here you have, this is what the question looks like to the student. They have the charge, they have the video, which they can play right from there. Well, good morning, everyone. And what? This better have a long time limit on this quiz. That's a 2-hour video. They can fast forward through it and try to find it, but
Dave, I have a quick question. When you embed a video like this, can you use the function of identifying like a picture or something like you did with the still picture? Is that possible here?
Well, that's only possible with still images.
Okay, thank you.
It'd be nice, but that would be really complicated to implement. Good question. So the student watches the appropriate part of the video. Probably you wouldn't give them a 2-hour and 30-minute video to watch. And then they go down here and they describe the process. They type that in. So the trick is using this, the trick to inserting a video in a question, any question. You can put it in. You can also put videos in individual answers. If you edit a question edit a copy, and just click in the answer. You get the rich content editor and the insert edit media button. So you can put images and videos into individual answers within a multiple choice or multiple answer or matching question. Because of the availability of the old rich content editor. But you have to remember how to do that in the old rich content editor. And that's, I just showed you how to do that. So that's how that works. Let me see if I have, and of course, I've long since run over time here, and we're in the question and answer period now. Let me take a look at the chat tool and see if there's anything in there that I did not cover that you asked. Are these, are they automatically loaded? No, new quizzes are not automatically in there. I showed you how to activate them.
David, I have one question. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Yeah, very good. Is that when I make a quiz, suppose I make a quiz with 50 questions.
Right.
This semester, and next semester, I want to give the students the same quiz, but I don't want them to see all the questions. Can I hide some of the questions?
No, if the questions are in the test, the students are going to see them. You'd have to create a new test that had just the questions that you wanted to use in it.
That is exactly my point, because you know that making a quiz, it takes a long time.
Right.
Once I make a quiz with 100 questions, suppose, and then I would like to hide, you know.
So the question is, can you make a copy of a quiz and then edit the copy, which would be much faster, right?
Yes, well, I have seen that you said so right now that we can copy the quiz.
Right.
And keep the original. I have seen that one. That is one option.
That's a migration, though. That was a migration, right, not a copy. Okay. And I'm trying to think if you can copy a new quiz to another new quiz with a different name.
Yes.
So that you can then just edit it.
So wouldn't you just have to go back to the original one in Classic and then just make another?
Well, you could, but what if you didn't have a Classic quiz? What if you made the new quiz from scratch?
Okay, well, that leads to my question. My question was going to be, because you said that you can't input a video, but my question was going to be, can you take a new?
No, you can input a video. You can put a video in to a new quiz.
Well, okay, so let me rephrase. Can you take a new quiz and then copy it or migrate it back the other way into the old one?
I know no way to convert a new quiz back into a Classic quiz.
Right, because of some of the functions that aren't in the new one.
Right.
Okay, so you can't.
That aren't in the Classic quiz. They're just two very different animals. So I don't know of a way to convert a new quiz back into a Classic quiz. I'll look into that. I can see why that might be valuable in certain circumstances, but I don't believe it's possible.
Okay, so I guess here's my next question then on that would be, can I take a quiz in the Classic quiz and then, to the gentleman's point, maybe copy it and then edit it for the piece of the original that I want. So let's say there's 50 questions. There are 3 or 4 questions that I really want. I can make a new bank of just those three or 4 questions and then migrate those over to be added to the new quiz as a way to capture those functionalities, et cetera, et cetera. Is that possible?
If I'm following you, yes. It would be a multi-step process, but you could do that. But let's see here if there's any option to copy this quiz. There is. But I think what you're going to have to do is copy it to another course.
Well, couldn't you just give it a different name?
I could, let's see. I could edit it and rename it, but it would still just be that quiz. It would still have the same questions in it and so on. So
it recognizes the questions as being the same as opposed to just what you're calling it as a file. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
right. Yeah, it recognizes the list of questions as you created. So what you could do in that case, here it is, duplicate. There is an option. I can duplicate this quiz. That was this one, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that appears at the same. Okay, then you can change the question.
You can change the name and you can go in and edit the questions.
Yeah, okay. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate
it. Thanks. I hadn't done that before, so that's.
Yeah, no, that is great. Yeah, that helps me a lot because I'm going to save a lot of time. Yeah, very good.
It would save you a lot of time rather than having to recreate the quiz from scratch.
Yes, absolutely. But I'm going to buy you lunch for that one.
The very next time I get down to San Diego, I'll take you up on that one.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You bet. All right. Always nice to have a happy customer. Let's see. Looking in the chat tool again, please feel free to ask more questions.
I'm wondering about the percentage feature and fudge points. Will extra credit still be applied?
Through fudge points?
Yes.
That's a good question. Let's see. Let's try that. Let's see. In this course, I'll need to go to the gradebook. And find a new quiz. And here's the test student's attempt. I can put that into the speed grader in the usual way. Do I have fudge points? Yes, I do. There they are. Works the same way as classic quizzes.
Good to know. Thank you.
That'd be my point too. I wasn't sure.
Can you do that again real quick, please?
Oh yeah, sure. I just went to the grade book under grades. And I found a new quiz that had at least one attempt. There's that one that we were working with today. There's the attempt. I clicked on the little symbol for the attempt, and that gave me the grade. Obviously, this one has essay questions and it haven't been graded yet, or it would have given me a grade there. I clicked the right arrow in the cell with the grade, and that brings in the side panel referring to this particular quiz attempt. And there's an option to bring the quiz up in the speed grader right here. So I click on speed grader, it comes up, it shows me the student's quiz submission. And if I scroll to the bottom of it, I have the opportunity to add fudge points to the quiz. That is, let's say I put in a question that didn't have a right answer, or where I had the wrong answer listed, and some people, got it, some people didn't. I just need to give everybody credit for that, or everybody a little extra credit for that. I can add to this attempt, this particular attempt, any number of points, just to right a wrong, perhaps, that I was responsible for. And this is fudge points. They're available in the classic quizzes and also in the new quizzes in the speed grader. You just have to bring up the student's attempt to apply them.
That's great, actually. You know
Yeah,
what, I
that can be very handy.
you know what, I just had a thought while you were talking, and my thought was, how could this be used in a face-to-face class situation?
Oh, it's
I'm just,
quite
I'm
possible
just,
to do your quizzing
right.
in
I was just thinking, I don't know if people have,
face-to-face class.
if anybody, I don't know if anybody's done that, but I think that would be a great thing to,
Oh, I know for a fact that a lot of people have done that.
okay.
There have been occasionally some minor whining about, this is a face-to-face class. We're not supposed to have to use Canvas. To which the answer is, well, the instructor has the prerogative to use Canvas as a supplementary resource
Yeah.
in a
a resource
face-to-face
for the
class, and you're required to do it. And all students have access to Canvas automatically. They would have access to your course. If they were enrolled in your course, they'd have access to it. And you can require them to take their quizzes.
So we could require students to take if they're taking the exam in face-to-face class like they would, we can require them to do it this way.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
let me butt in on here on though, because I use Canvas to supplement my face-to-face classes. And you would not be able to have one of these quizzes in class. It would have to be a take-home test concept because not everybody has computers available to them
I
at
was going
home.
to say, unless the you have to be offering your face-to-face class in a computer lab,
Right.
you couldn't have all the students take the quiz at the same moment under your eye. I have known instructors to give their tests at an alternate time or give their tests in a computer lab that was available at the time that they were normally in lecture, and have the students meet in the computer lab instead of meeting in the classroom. That's a lot of moving parts, of course, but I have known people to do that. But no, that you can also have the students take the quiz on their own time from their own.
If you do have them take it on your own time, you are also saving time that you could use for lecture.
Truth. You don't have to spend an hour of valuable lecture time watching them sweat and walking around the room to prevent them from cheating and so on. You can utilize that for something more pointful, which is would be my motivation for doing that. Use lecture time, precious lecture time for lecturing or for working on material or whatever, but not for quizzing. You can do that online. And there are all these tools that we have to help minimize the possibility that they're going to cheat, or successfully anyway. And we talk about that in our seminar on assessment, but in Canvas, but basically setting a time limit, using appropriate question types, using a lot of essay questions, things like that, that make it less feasible for students to cheat. Setting up, if you're using or if you're using objective questions, randomizing them, pulling them out of a test bank randomly, randomizing the order of answers, all this they can't completely prevent cheating in an online testing situation, but they can make it much less easy. And that's all we can do in the classroom. Trust me on that. I've been worked over by pros. I had a program one time that had a bunch of highly motivated students in it with fairly low morals. And I would give chemistry quizzes in class, and they would find a way to cheat on a chemistry quiz. I found out they were swapping papers. So I finally ended up having to set them in alternate rows, line them up in columns, the desks and columns, separating them with an empty column in between them so that they couldn't just hand their quiz papers to the person next door easily. And they did this with me in the room, with me walking around and standing behind them and so on. They managed to do this. The students can be incredibly inventive and motivated when it comes to cheating on a test. I eventually even had to print the tests for the different rows on different colored paper, so I could tell at a glance if somebody had swapped his test with somebody else. And I swear to God, they still found a way. Not as often, but it's still. So it's not like giving tests in class is a perfectly secure situation either. So testing online using Canvas as a supplement in your course is a great idea to me. And there are just all sorts of ways you can make that reliable and secure, or as secure as any assessment situation is ever going to be. And it saves you a lot of time, and it especially saves you a lot of time grading. No more Scantron sheets to scan and things like that. So that's a concept that's very useful. Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions?
This was very, very helpful, Dave.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. We do our best, but I wish I could do more. I think I may need to break this in two and do a section on just creating the test and show you how to do the other, create the different question types. But there's just not room and not time when we have to cover everything else about new quizzes. So maybe I just need to split that out as a separate session. But thank you very much. You know how much that means to me. You're a teacher yourself. So. All right.
I had, like I said, I had this experience migrating my test over to this new format. And it was a challenge, not because the process was a challenge and I liked the new format, but there was just some complications and just the conversion over.
Right.
That just took a lot more time to figure out, because what I didn't want was the students to have challenges. And matter of fact, one of my students, and maybe you can address this, I had set the exam up for 2 attempts. She made one attempt, and then the exam shut down on her. And then
which can help.
Again.
Which can happen, yeah.
Yeah, she tried again, and got into 3 or 4 questions again, and then it shut down. Now, here's what was interesting. When I got her email about it, and I looked into the reporting part, on the reporting part, it said that she was in progress. And then when I called Canvas about it, Canvas on their reporting end showed that she hadn't even attempted. So there was something that was going on, I don't know, with the network or the system or the structure, where the reporting in each of these different spaces was different.
Yeah. And
what
did the student have the test stop at the same point each time? Do you know?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, like 3, 4 questions in, and it stopped.
No, but if it was pretty much, if it were stopping at slightly different times each time, that could be an issue with the student's internet connection.
That's what they were saying.
If it stopped on exactly the same question each time, is probably something to do with the testing engine and or that individual question. So it'd be very interesting to know that. Another thing you could do, of course, is take the test as your test student and see if it did the same thing to you.
Yeah, but the questions are shuffled, so the questions wouldn't be in the same place anyway.
That would make it harder to tell. You're absolutely right.
Right.
Yeah, there's some troubleshooting we could do in a situation like that, but it sounds like there was either a student's internet connection was problematic and unstable, or there was something unstable in the new quizzes testing engine. And we'd really like to know the difference. You know, the one we can maybe do something about, the other, well, did other students have the same problem?
She was the only one that I had gotten any communication about that, but you know, and they said that it might be a browser issue. So I think it also just depends on the literacy of the student.
Right.
Some might just go ahead and try it, a new browser, right? Because they know to do something different, and then it just works. So, you know, it's just nice
and
to
also
know to make these
Canvas only
recommendations.
supports certain browsers. You know, they don't support older editions of current browsers or older browsers that are no longer in use, like Internet Explorer. A lot of people out there still using that, but it's not supported by Canvas anymore. So that could be, but that's usually if the student gets started and it lets her get started, it's unlikely to be that sort of issue. It's probably something more like her internet connection glitched or the testing engine glitched because there was something in a particular question that caused it to and that finding the answer to something like that can be very complicated and time consuming. And the fact that it only happened with that student suggests it's something probably unique to that student and her operating her computing environment, but you can never be absolutely sure. She just may have been incredibly unlucky because of but the fact that it happened more than once suggests that it's probably something to do with that individual student or her computer or her internet connection or her web browser, but maybe not. Interesting.
Just a reminder for you, Dave.
Yes.
All of these workshops are in Flex. And so people need to sign up for them by the end of the day that this workshop is presented.
Yeah, but we have, if you want Flex, and this is only, unfortunately, right now, only the credit colleges are offering Flex. Continuing education, we get a lot of folks from continuing ed attending these. They can't earn Flex for this presentation. Not until August does their Flex year start.
They are weird.
But I know we're not going to go there. But
well, now when I put on workshops, I know who to contact at CE so that they can arrange for their people to get time too.
If you have low friends in high places, you can get around this. If you didn't sign up for this, or you don't sign up for it by tonight, just let me know. If you want Flex credit, I can have Mary Kingsley put you into the system. I can verify that you attended, and she'll just put you in there and give you the option to claim the Flex credits.
Much appreciated. I completed 71 hours last school year, and I only needed 4.
I know. Yeah, not for most people, Flex credit is not that big a motivator on this. But this, as of July 1st. It is possible for college faculty members, faculty members to get Flex credit, and I put the Flex number for this session in the announcement that I sent out earlier.
And I found it by looking by date.
Oh, good. Okay.
7/12, and then I saw.
Nice to know that's working again. For a while, that wasn't working very well.
Yeah.
Could you give me the Flex number? Because I think I deleted it.
I sure can.
Just look, can I just go to the Flex site and search?
You can get it from the Flex site, but I can give it to you too. I've got it here somewhere. Wait one.
So for each one of these that you're doing, Dave, that we attend, because I know I've come to a lot of them, and I didn't even think to try to get Flex credit for them.
Yeah, you can get Flex credit for all of them as long as they're offered, as long as they're not offered in June for the credit colleges or July for the for CE. They don't do Flex credit during those months.
Oh, okay. But we can get.
Oh no. Right? Just saying, I'm getting that number for you.
But this is July, so we could get credit for that, right?
It's 15062.
That's it. I remember now that you said it. 15062. Very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you so much, both of you.
You're welcome.
You're more than welcome. Okay. I'll answer any more questions you have about this or about anything at this point.
I'm going to say goodbye and see you at the next time. Thank you for giving us the link again for the recorded ones that we can go back and watch.
Absolutely.
I'm going to save those to my computer in a separate Dave Giberson page.
just go, all you have to do is go to the our on-demand site.
No, you don't get it. I don't know how to get into the on-demand site because if I search, it doesn't show up. And I have got so many sites in my life. I appreciate you giving us the link.
Or look at my email. When I send you any email, I send out those reminder emails.
Yeah.
Let me pull one of those up and show you what I mean here. Here's my inbox, messy as it is. And if I go to the items I've sent, here's the one I sent out this morning. In my signature, at the bottom of the email, is the link to Open on Demand.
Good.
Okay, and then when you get to Open on Demand, there's in the top menu bar, there's an entry for workshop archives. If you click on that, you'll see the recordings all listed, hundreds of them, literally, in chronological order, the most recent at the top. So I've got, I don't have this one up there yet. I'm still recording it, but the last one I did was lecturing with PowerPoint and Zoom, and there's the recording. You just go in and get it right there. So you don't need those individual links. You can just find them on the on-demand site at any time and just bring up one of my old emails and find that link. I've also got in my signature a link to our professional development calendar. And this shows you the upcoming ones for July.
Okay, so let me ask a question.
Please.
In relationship to the videos that we can upload in the new quiz.
Quizzes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That any type of video, or that
let's see.
Like the full blown, like you said, you had the one that you had uploaded was like an hour or something, or 2 hours.
Well, in order to put those videos into a new quiz question, the videos already have to be online.
Okay.
Don't actually upload them into the question. You put them on YouTube or Canvas Studio. And then you just you get the embed code for the video from YouTube or Canvas Studio, and you put that into the embed code box like I showed you earlier.
So what if it's something like Films on Demand? Would that work? Or would we have to put that into?
Probably not. Well, I don't know. That's a good question. Oh.
Because I know some of those videos are easy to embed, like in the modules.
I think Films on Demand gives you an embed code, if I remember correctly.
So the key is having an embed code that already exists.
Embed code, right? And I know you could do it if you had the new rich content editor in there, because it has a way to embed Films on Demand directly without you even having to mess with the embed code. It does all that for you. But I don't know if you can do it with that old rich content. I can't remember if you can do it with that old rich content editor or not. That's a really good question. I tell you what, I will, rather than hold you right now, you've been here for certain parts have got to be getting numb by now. I will look into that and see if there's a way to pull one off of Films on Demand or some of the other library resources that we have and get that into a quiz question in either classic quizzes or new quizzes.
Okay,
That's
here's
a
my
really
last
good
question.
I'll see if it's possible. And if it's possible, I'll make a tutorial on how to do it. And I will send everybody who is in the meeting
Think.
a link to that tutorial. Okay, that's a neat little project for me. I'm always looking for good things to do new tutorials on. And that sounds like a really interesting one if I can get it to work. So I'll
Okay, so here's my absolute last question, and that is,
oh,
when you
keep
put
going,
this-
keep going.
well, I gotta go, I have to do some other things, but this is very productive, so I can do those other things. So one of the, when I was talking to Canvas support, one of the things in the new quiz format was getting to the preview, right? When you like the student view.
A student view of the quiz, yeah.
Right, there is a preview button, right? That is, but it doesn't always show. So I'm trying to figure out, well, where do I have to be to consistently access the preview button in the new quiz format?
Quizzes. Let's see here.
Now, the reason why that's significant is because in the module that I have the quizzes in, that module is set up so that you have to, it's at the beginning of one module, but I have the settings set up that you have to complete the previous module before you can go into. So it doesn't allow me to just look in the student view because of those parameters between the two modules. So it's really important.
Well, of course, those prerequisites don't
see right there in the upper right hand corner.
Yeah, those prerequisites don't apply to you as the instructor. They'll only affect the students. So you should.
But if I'm looking at the student view, though, it doesn't open.
Right, exactly. But preview is meant to show you more or less a student view of the quiz.
Okay, stop right there. Wait, go back.
Okay.
Stop. Go back. Return.
Oops, I went all the way back.
Okay, is that the right place? That's not the right place.
Build.
Okay, you go to build.
There's the preview button.
Stop. So you see right across from build on the left, in the column, there go the points. So these points right here where it says 15 points.
Yes.
Across from the left of build, that's where you get the system will update it. What's accurate. So when I deleted a question or whatever, those point values changed.
Correct.
So, it's not, to me, that's not an easy place to find that. Usually it's like over to the right or somewhere.
Well,
so
yeah, that is the interface in new quizzes right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would just recommend, when you're doing these things that you might want to point out, because when you go back to the previous, go do the up, no, the arrow at the top to the left, right there. Now you see, okay, in the point value, this is where you were talking about earlier. See how this is different. That's 20.
It's designed to be possible.
Right.
Different.
But when
they have a reason.
But when the students are reading it and they're just kind of going through, they'll see this first.
Yeah.
Thinking that it's this amount, and then it may be something different. So I just think
let's see. Wait a minute. When the student takes the quiz,
because these are the parameters that they see.
Right. Well, let's see exactly what they see. Let's go to student view. This quiz.
Oh, it does say out of 15.
Yeah. So they see under their attempt, but they don't see that until they made an attempt.
Right.
Okay. It doesn't say 15 points here. and it
Right,
doesn't
so
say
in
20
the-
points.
Like, can you go to the instruction? What about like at the very beginning of the exam for them? What does that look
This
like?
is the very beginning of the exam for them. This
Oh,
is
the
the
attempt
first thing
history?
they see when they click on the link in the module or in the quizzes tool to this quiz. This is the first thing they see.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
So they don't see the number of points because there could be that ambiguity, but where they will see it, I'm afraid, is in the grade book. Let's go to grades and here's the quiz. Here it says out of 20.
Right, exactly.
And if
That's
they,
my point.
and once they have made an attempt, it will show them the total of the question points, which is likely different than this.
So that could be problematic, and I would just highly recommend
But
that
they
that
do
we're aware of it,
for that,
and
though.
that we make it, the same. That may not be something that's important to everybody, but at
Then
least
we're back in the situation we had in classic quizzes that they were trying to remedy, where it's so hard to get the exact right number of points to make the quiz fit into your weighting scheme in your grade book. So
but at least if
they
you
did
know,
this for a reason that they're probably not going to back off on.
I get that. Well, I'm just saying,
And I probably
as an
wouldn't want them
instructor,
to, quite frankly, because this makes it so much easier to set up your grading scheme, your grading process in the grade book by not having to create your test in such a way that it has that the questions add up to a certain number of points. But you can always do that. And if that's something you really don't want your students to have to deal with, you can just ensure that whatever number you pick, the number of points you pick, is the sum of all the points of the questions.
yeah, that was my point. Just
You
as an
could
instructor,
build the test.
do that.
You could pick some, when you're creating a quiz and starting out, whoops, I'm in student view there, sorry. When you were starting out and you were building a quiz, you could just pick some random number for here and then build the quiz, put the questions in, set the number of points for each question, see what that adds up to, and come back and set this to that number.
Absolutely. That's all I was saying, is that people should know if they wanted to match, that they can do that.
They can do that.
And this is how they do that. And that, yes, if it doesn't matter for whatever reason, that's okay too. And number 3, to know what exactly is the student seeing, because
What
when you're
are
in
they
the
seeing?
classroom,
When are they seeing it? Yeah.
yeah, when you're in a classroom, you have these super savvy tech, online learners, and then you have the ones that don't know how to turn it on.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got this super range, and I've had some people say, well, I noticed this, that, or the other. So I just think it's important for us to answer those people.
It's certainly going to be necessary to explain that to the students. And that might be an idea for another tutorial. You make a good point. This could be confusing. So a little tutorial that explained how this worked and what those numbers mean might be worthwhile, both for faculty and for students.
I would also say that if for any reason, those numbers are different, that the faculty,
They usually will be, yeah.
Yeah, that they, 1, be aware of it, and 2, be able to articulate, why that is if they get asked that by a student.
Right.
Right.
And that's where a student-oriented tutorial would come in handy. On our on-demand site, we do have a section for students.
Somebody might argue, that is problematic or whatever as a student. And I've come across some of those people who say, well, this is a problem. And then when you explain it, then it's like, oh, okay.
Right.
That was after they,
but if they don't know
about it, etc.
Yeah, if they don't know why those two numbers are different, they have every reason to be confused unless somebody's explained it to them. So maybe I need to do a tutorial and put it here under student Canvas tutorials that explains that for both students and faculty.
Right. And I know for me, in my instructions, I tell them you have X amount of questions, they're worth X amount of points or a variety of different points, blah, 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 blah. So that you kind of answer some of those questions already, right?
Right.
If there's going to be a difference in these spaces of totals, then they don't have to go into it. Just they can say reference and say, you know, you're going to see, if you want to know what the real total points are, it's in the grade book. And they can leave it like that. And if they have any other questions, then, but that this is the total and you'll find it here. And if you want to know what that is, this is the number that counts or something to that effect.
Exactly.
And that way, it
I'm
also
writing
protects
that,
the instructor.
writing that idea down right now for a new.
Yeah, it also protects the instructor if anybody doesn't do well and they want to make an argument about, well, it wasn't clear, blah, 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 blah. So.
Yeah, also, I use the Canvas grade book to manually put in their test grades. And I put in my syllabus that the Canvas one is strictly for their convenience. It is not my official grade book,
Right.
but if they find any mistakes there, please let me know to make sure I have it correct in my official grade book.
That's a great point, Carlin. I think that's a good point. Now, the points are, once the submission is done, these automatically get migrated into gradebook, correct, Dave?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And in the grade book, it's going to show as whatever out of 20 in this particular case. And but the sum of the points of the questions was 15 points. And that's going to show up to the student when they look at their attempt record. But they are going to see it then, and then they're going to see 20 in the grade book. And that's
exactly
your point. That's very likely to be confusing for them.
Exactly. So what's the other 5 points from?
Yeah. Well, well, why do the two numbers not match? And what's that mean?
But also when it goes over to the grade book, it's for the entire quiz. So if you have more than one question on there, it's going to be the totals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that test had more than one, a quiz had more than one question on it, but indeed,
right.
It's
so,
going,
yeah.
But the fact that those two numbers do appear to students in different places at different times without explanation is, I see your point that can be a problem. So probably we need some way to explain to them why that happens and what it means. And that's
right. Yeah, like
I interrupt here.
Help mitigate the confusion anyway.
Right.
Eliminate it.
So you could say, like, if the other 5 points is an essay question, which this system doesn't account for it has to be added manually.
No, in this case, this is just the fact that you picked one number of possible points to use in your computations in your grade book, and the actual number of points in the questions
was different, right?
Points
I need to interrupt here
up to that
with a quick question because I have to go take care of some horses. They had breakfast and they're waiting patiently for me to turn them loose. When you went to the test bank, you went on a link that I did not see the first link, and you had a piggy. I don't see a pig.
Yeah, it is. Let me go back to that quiz. Just any of them will do. If I'm gonna go to build, you have to be in build to make any changes to your quiz.
Okay.
And if I go to add a question here at the bottom, it asks me what kind of question.
Yeah.
If I want to get to the item bank,
there's a pig.
There's the piggy bank.
Thank you. I was looking up on the
No,
toolbar.
no,
I found a hamburger, but I didn't find
Every
it.
time I do this, I have to remind myself of how to get to item banks when you're
Well,
when you're
if
at.
you look on the toolbar, the fourth one over looks like a hamburger. But I couldn't find the pig. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Takima, yeah. Thank you, Carlin. Same to you. Thanks,
Thank you
Dave.
for
I'm
all
out
your
as well.
Oh, it's so good to talk to both of you.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
again soon, I hope. Bye-bye.